All right, good morning, Faith Church. Welcome to Bible study. Got a couple folks here in person for our first Bible study in person and online at the same time. So this should be interesting. We've got a lot going on here this morning that's different, and this is going to be similar to those call-in radio shows. So we've got the live stuff happening right here in the studio. We've got our folks joining. They are living we are living 30 seconds into the future. They're living 30 seconds into the past, however you want to look at it. But why don't we start as we usually do with a song here. You can see I've got this little microphone on my face and have got also got a different background than you're used to seeing for Bible study. So to make this work this morning, to pick up both the guitar and not just my voice, I'm going to put this down here. Lord, prepare me to be a sanctuary. Lord, prepare me to be a sanctuary, pure and holy, tried and true, with thanksgiving. I'll be a living sanctuary for you. Lord, prepare me to be a sanctuary, pure and holy, tried and true, with thanksgiving. I'll be a living sanctuary for you. All right, let's take a moment and pray together. God, we're taking this moment in time, and we ask that you would help us to make it special, where we are open to your Spirit to move in a unique way as we open up your word and as we think about and meditate on what it means for you to be close to us. God, we know that you are closer than we can imagine, and we just want to learn our part to have the fullest and most wonderful experience of you that we possibly can. And we're grateful that you're here with us, and we ask that you help us today. In your name, amen. All right, so let's say hello this morning. We got some folks joining in. We have Bob and Carol, and we have Diane. We have Judy. We've got Jimmy Hines. We've got Paula Akasiewicz all the way from South Carolina. We've got Margaret and maybe Jim. We've got Joy and maybe Dee. So welcome everybody. We're glad that you're here today. Now, one of the things that's going to make this experience a little different is that it is going to include your input, potentially. If you are feeling so led to ask a question or to make a comment, what I'm going to do is I'll go along and we'll put some breaks in between and give you a chance to kind of give some feedback. So one of the ways you can do that online is if you are watching on Facebook. As before, you're welcome to write in the comment section your question or comment, and I'll see it pop up here. Just know that it's coming 30 seconds later, so there's a little gap there. I'll try to be patient and keep an eye out for that. But there's also another way that you can join as well. Now, I'm going to share with you my screen here. And this is what you're seeing on Facebook. You can see it's 30 seconds in the past. This is going to be like somebody looking at somebody else. Now, up here, what I want you to see is right underneath where it says Bible Study January the 8th, there is a little description here. If you'll click where it says See More, there is a link. And if you click that link, it will open up a new page in your browser if you're using a browser. If you're on your mobile device, it will probably open your browser. It will ask you if you'd like to share your microphone, which you can allow. It'll ask if you want to use your camera, which you can allow. And then it's going to ask you to put your name here. And you can see right here it's asked, yes, it's already checked there. It's using my microphone, and then here's the speaker. And I'm going to join the room. All right, you can see we've got it's not going to do that to you. It's just doing that to me because I'm joining 30 seconds, 30 seconds, 30 seconds, etc. So you can join that link, and it will show up here. And when we do have a question, if you're using your mobile device, and I can see somebody is joining us already. It looks like Paula. And what we're going to do is, when we do have questions, I'll ask you to just kind of, if you would like to go and you're out there online, I'll just ask you to raise your hand, and we will get to you when we can. Now, this is, again, kind of like a radio call-in show, and what I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have to mute myself and give you a chance to speak. You can see here in our worship space, we've got Karen and Mike Overly are joining us in person, and they're the first brave souls, the pioneers of our in-person Bible study post-COVID. And what we have set up here, if you look just next to the overlays, you see a microphone stand. So in our Bible study here, so that anybody online can hear what your question is, you're going to have a chance to share that way. Now, just pray with me. There's certain buttons that must be pushed in the right order, so pray that we do that correctly. But I think this is a chance for us to kind of do a little bit closer to what we used to do with Bible study, which is it's not just one person talking. It's been one person talking in Bible study for quite a long time. So I'm looking forward to your input. Sometimes you do have your comments, but it's just not the same to be there. And hello, Scott Button. Glad to see that you're joining us today. So again, anybody who's looking online, if you just go up to the description, Bible Study January 28, see more, a link will be there, and you can join in. And I can see we've got Paula is joined in, and we welcome you, Paula. And when we get to the question time, we'll be happy to take yours if you have any. And anybody else that would like to join, you're going to have to pick and choose. If you're on Facebook and you'd like to join with the link, I would suggest you just join with the link and then ignore Facebook, because it's going to be, you're going to have travel sickness from time travel sickness, because you might hear echoes of yourself. Margaret, it's not allowing me to input a name. Okay, if you can, Margaret, if you want to input without a name, just see if you can do that, and we'll know that it's you. All right, we are in this wonderful book here, God is Closer Than You Think, John Ortberg, and we have gotten into, Margaret, I can see you now, and we are wrapping up. We're just going to look at the very end of the first chapter, and then we'll kind of dig into chapter 2 and see what that has for us today. So another thing that I'm going to try to do here is I'm going to try to show you my book. All right. So I've got my online book here, and what we're going to start with is we're going to start with the very last page or last few pages of chapter 1. And let's go through this. These are foundational truths of my life with God, and what we are been asked to do by the author is just to look over this every day for the next few weeks. They're great reminders as we're not just reading about being closer to God, but ultimately we really want this to change our real life experience with God. So let's look at these foundational truths. So the first one is God is always present and active in my life, whether or not I see him. This is one of the first powerful truths. If we don't believe this, then we're probably not going to ever experience the presence of God if you don't believe God is there. Now, I know that God sometimes breaks the rules and catches people off guard and things like that. But if we, for example, think that God is, alive and well and is just not active or present, just really doesn't care about us, or we don't deserve it, or whatnot, that's going to have an impact on our experience of God too. So God is always present and active. Coming to recognize and experience God's presence is learned behavior. I can cultivate it. And that is both good news, and it can be intimidating news as well. What we want to do is, if God is present and active, we want to recognize it and we want to experience it. That's what we, when we're reading a book about God's closeness, we want to experience and recognize how close God is. And it is something that's learned. That means at some point in time you may say, oh, wow, I think that was God. And then a little bit later, you kind of recognize similarities. Oh, there he is again. And with time, this becomes something that we become more aware of. So we learn this, and we can cultivate it. The intimidating part a little bit later on is we may first start thinking to ourselves, I hope I don't mess this up. I hope I don't do something wrong. I hope I'm not doing, I hope I'm not trying to experience this and it's just not happening. I'm always tempted to live outside this moment. When I do that, I lose my sense of God's presence. And of course, this is when we get kind of stuck in our own heads, because this is where the past and the future takes place up here in our heads. And that's living outside of the moment. It's easy to think about the past. It's easy to think about the future, or that whole hypothetical thing. What it makes me think of is one of the parts of the grieving process, Kubler-Ross 5 stages of grief. One of them that never really made a lot of sense to me until it kind of clicked was bargaining. And bargaining is that hypothetical of the past. So we go back to the past and we say, what if this or this had happened? And we can play all types of different scenarios of if this or if that or if the other had happened, I wouldn't be here in this moment. Things would have turned out differently. And so that's a powerful experience of the grieving process that is difficult to overcome. It's difficult to stop yourself from living in that hypothetical and realizing, well, what's done is done, and I'll never know I'll never know if things were different, if things would have turned out differently. It's an unknown because it's hypothetical. And so that's another way we can live outside of the moment of God's presence, is kind of living in this hypothetical situation. What about this and what about that? And it's a great part of our brain that we have to survive, because we can kind of anticipate a couple steps ahead, and it keeps us safe and helps us to plan, and we use it a lot. Some of us are very astute about that, planning one step ahead and getting ready for whatever's coming next. But that's living outside the moment. God's presence is right here in this moment. And so coming back to that is very important. Sometimes God seems far away for reasons I do not understand. Those moments are opportunities to learn. And this whole next chapter will look a little bit closer at that. Why does God seem close sometimes, and why does God seem far away sometimes? Does that have something to do am I doing something? Is God doing something? What's happening here? But ultimately, we can learn from those experiences. Whenever I fail, I can always start again right away. And that is very good news. That's wonderful news. And that means we can't lose something. God's grace is always there, coming back to us again and again. And no one knows the full extent to which any human being can experience God's presence. So if you've had one of those rainbow day experiences, like we'll talk about in the next chapter, one of these outstanding moments of God's presence, there could be more. And that can be wonderful, but we don't have to say, well, I want a repeat of that. But what we can say is, God, that was wonderful, and I'd love to experience your presence again. So it could be even better. My desire for God ebbs and flows, but his desire for me is constant. That is something that is encouraging, hopefully, to us. Hopefully that doesn't make us feel too ashamed. God, I would love for you to be close all the time. The next chapter talks about that whole, God, can you hide your face just for a moment? Because so God's desire for us is constant. And then we've got the last few here. Every thought carries a spiritual charge that moves me a little closer or a little farther from God. And I went ahead and added another note here. There is a lot of scripture about the presence of God or the face of God. There's a lot of texts in the Old Testament that talk about how God turned his face away. God turned his face away from these people or these circumstances, and then automatically something bad happens. And for God to turn his face toward you is for you to experience God's presence. For God to turn his face away is for you to be separate from the presence of God. So that concept is used a lot to talk about why things happened the way that they did in the Old Testament. But if we look at this first truth here, God is always present and active in my life, then we're not really. I'll put it in other words. I would like to say it moves me a little closer or farther from recognizing and experiencing God's presence. So God, I think God is always there, and those thoughts that create spiritual charges, they do, I think, influence what we recognize and what we experience. So if we're kind of moving in a more negative way, we're kind of numbing our senses of being able to experience God. But God's always there. So I want to add that note there. Every aspect of my life is an interest to God. Every aspect of my life. Every aspect. And these are even the aspects that we don't like about our lives. There are some things that we don't like. There are some things we do like about our lives. The things we don't like about our lives, God's interested in those things too. And it's not as simple as, when we're growing up and we do something that we're not supposed to, we learn shame, 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 and that makes us stop that behavior. As we get older and our life becomes more mature and complex, God is not just saying shame, shame, shame for the things that maybe still need some work in our life, but God is there to show us maybe how we got to this place and how we can get out of this place. It's not that simple. So God is interested in that stuff that we don't like, and God is there to help us to see more clearly those dark places that we don't like to go, and to help us know how we can experience wholeness beyond those things. My path to experiencing God's presence will not look quite like anyone else's. That's something important. You may get some input from some other followers of God, and their experiences can be encouraging or helpful, but also know that God might be speaking to you in a little different way, or interacting with you in a little different way than somebody else, because you're a unique person. And then lastly, straining and trying too hard does not help. And this I still remember, I remember a friend from high school, and he really wanted to believe that God was true and real. I mean, he desperately, desperately wanted it. And he was telling me, I just keep telling God, show me you're real. Just prove it to me, and I'll be good, and I'm good. And that's that type of thing. That's a little, we're kind of manipulating God a little bit in that sense. We're kind of being a little bit demanding. We're kind of saying, God, I'll do what you want if you do what I want first. And that's not going to work in the short term, and that point of view is not going to work in the long term either. So it's surrender, and that's the key to so much of the life of faith, and it's something that we can always find ourselves in need of doing. And we can be going along just great, but I guarantee you there will be places where we kind of hit these bumps in the road, or you hit a wall, and it's surrender is the key. So I'm going to give you guys an opportunity. Let's just make sure. Paula, I was getting your voice double. I'm sorry. Let's see if that did it. There was a little button here I may need to have keep in place. If you want to try again, Paula, and let's see if you don't get it doubled now. We did a couple test runs yesterday, and we had some people hearing double when they were calling in, but weren't hearing me double. So try one more time, and if that doesn't work, we'll keep at it. All right. Anybody here or anybody online? Anybody want to make any comments about these things here? All right, Paula, raise your hand if you would like to ask a question. And first of all, are you hearing me double? I guess that would be the question for you. I can see that she's staring at the screen, and I think Margaret is here. And Margaret, I don't see your video, but let's see. All right, this is your chance, folks. Raise your hand if you've got a question or comment. If not, you're more than welcome to just, sit and listen here. Okay. If you can use the microphone right there, I'm going to turn that on for you. All right, and we're going to have a comment here from Karen.
I have a live comment. Sometimes you surrender things and you think you surrender them, but don't you know next day or maybe later that day, it's coming right back to you. So it's really not surrendered, I guess. I don't know. I don't know about that.
You're definitely right. You're definitely right. And the thing that's strange about surrender is it's kind of like let go harder. You know, how do you do that? It's like there's a term in the closest term, like in Buddhism, is called grasping. So if you're grasping, you're trying to hold on to something or control something, or and we use that in Christianity as well, where we're clinging to something, or we refuse to let go. Grasping is the opposite of surrender. We want to hold on to it, and so we can be holding on, and then we're letting go. Okay, I'm letting go. And okay, I'm letting go, and it's like how much is all the way? That's I guess when it's not all the way. If you have to keep surrendering, then then that's the case. All right, we've got Margaret here. And so, Margaret, what I'm going to do is I have to mute myself so you don't hear yourself double, and let's see how this goes. All right.
Okay, are you hearing me well? Anyway, my thought is that in Buddhism, there's a lot of effort put into working towards letting go. My experience of Christianity is that it doesn't seem to emphasize the work we need to let go. And so we think it's easier, we think it's automatic, we think it happens, but letting go it takes a lot of work and it's hard. Just my thought.
I turned my microphone off the wrong way. Yes, definitely in Buddhism and in some parts of Christianity as well. It's that how much work is involved, how much of the quote success or fullness of your own walk of faith, how much does that have to do with the hard work? It is hard. It's hard. Surrender is hard. And the tricky part is when we start to say it's hard work. Well, surrender is when we stop working. But that's hard. So if you want to say that it's work, it's just hard. It's just hard. And we can learn along the way that there definitely are benefits to hard work. And I think that there is a calling that God gives us for hard work. Taking care of someone who is in need is hard work. if we love someone, if we feel compassion for someone, and we want to help make that person's life better, that is hard work. That's effort and energy and work. And there is benefit to that. We're told to do that. And we see Jesus working hard for that. And then there is the surrender part. So we can experience this in our hard work, where we can get to a place where we realize that we've kind of hit a ceiling. We ran out of energy. We've gotten beyond the point of frustration. We felt like we've given everything and it's just not working, or whatever. We finally can get to the place where we're like, God, I can't do it. God, I need your help. And we probably knew it all along that we needed God's help, but we seem, and maybe it's just a part of our walk of faith, we seem to constantly be reminded that we need God completely and totally to come in, because we can do so much, and then there's all the rest, and that's for God. Well, let's go ahead and we need letting go lessons, is what Joy said. And Diane said, if you have your phone or computer on, it may be the reason the double sound. So you could have, if you're joining online, you could have like two tabs open. If you have the Facebook tab open and then this joining discussion tab, if you've got the volume on for both, you might hear double. It's a learning process. Another one. It's all about learning today. All right. So we're going to go ahead into chapter 2, Where's Waldo? And this is the first quote that we have from Armand Nikolai. We may ignore, but we cannot evade the presence of God. The world is crowded with him. He walks everywhere incognito, and the incognito is not always easy to penetrate. The real labor is to remember to attend. And so here again, God is everywhere. God is involved beyond what we realize. And one of the ways for us to talk about it is like this word incognito, or later on we see God, it says God hides himself. So God is hiding in all these different places. I think it's Brother Lawrence that toward the end of the chapter has a quote, and he talks about God hiding everywhere. Now this word here, is God hiding or are we blind? That's the question that I had for that word incognito. So this is a thing where we're trying to understand why we may not be experiencing the nearness of God. And one of those things can be, we can look at it by saying God is hiding. So we could say, metaphorically speaking, God is hiding and is waiting for just the right moment because God wants you to learn something, and then he's going to show up. This is, you can imagine a kid and an adult playing hide and seek, and it's like, if the parent wants to make some kind of a point, they could wait until they show themselves. Now, maybe this is something that God is doing, but this can also be something that it's like, it's not so much that God is hiding, is that like you're not seeing him. You're not paying attention to him. You're looking at something else. There's a phrase, and I don't know if it comes from the South. It sounds like it comes from Texas, but they say, if you're going to look for something and you can't find it, and you finally found it, and it was like in this obvious place, they say, well, if it was a snake, it would have bit you. So that's another way that we could experience the presence of God, is when we finally realize that God is here. It's like, why didn't I see him? God was right there with us. So is God hiding, or are we not seeing it? If you played hide and seek with kids, sometimes you're like, this is the most lousy hiding place in the world, and they still can't find me. And maybe that's what God says, is like, this is the most lousy hiding place in the world, and they still can't find me. What are they paying attention to? It's certainly not the game of hide and seek. They must be daydreaming or something like that. So here's a few of these questions that arise most frequently when it comes to experiencing God's presence. Why do I sometimes feel God's presence stronger in my daily life than other times? When it is so easy to see God all around me in the trees and the birds and nature, why is it so hard to feel His presence, especially when I need Him most? And why is it that at times when I seek God, I feel no response? Am I asking amiss? How do I know? So those three questions. Those are, they're very common, and I'm sure that you may have experienced those yourself. So one of the things let's look at is the strength of the presence of God. So what exactly does that mean? Of course, when we're talking about spiritual terms, sometimes we are at a loss for words, but maybe there's this undeniable presence of God, and then there's other times when we're like, I think this is God, but I'm not really sure. So why does it seem that sometimes it's stronger and sometimes not? And then sometimes, why is it hard to feel? So we want a feeling. When we say that we experience God's presence, it's usually some kind of a feeling. Not necessarily to be confused with an emotion or a physical feeling, but it's in that kind of a ballpark, maybe elevated beyond that. So we're looking for a feeling. Now this is worth thinking about for a moment. If we're looking for the feeling, one of the things that we have to remember is we have to remember all the other ways that we're feeling right now in this moment. So we have a certain physical feeling. Now, I can be just a little nauseated, or I could experience pain in my joints, or I could have a headache, or I could be feeling like really rested. And so there's this physical feeling in our body. That's going on. That's happening. And then there's the other senses. There's, what am I seeing? Am I seeing, more clearly today than other days? What am I hearing? Am I hearing anything, or are things kind of muffled? And then those other senses of like, am I tasting anything, or am I smelling anything? So we've got all these senses all the time working. Now, we don't always pay attention to them. You can, if you're gonna run a marathon, my guess, because I haven't done it before, but my guess is at some point you probably try to kind of turn off the pain, because you're going to be in pain. If you're going that far and that hard, you're going to kind of turn off the pain. So there is a way for us to kind of pay attention to feelings or not pay attention to feelings. So just know that those things are going on. We have several frequencies taking place. And then on top of that, we have the emotions and the mental busyness that's taking place. And that has our attention as well. We could be feeling very loved. We could be feeling very at peace. We could be feeling a lot of anxiety. We could be feeling very sad. So in addition to all of our regular senses, we have those emotional senses. And so that's taking place at the same time. So on top of that, we want to feel the presence of God. And most people, if we describe the presence of God, it's all those good things. I feel warm. I feel loved. I have felt like all the other things of life. It's like the song. Is it that they fade? Grow strangely dim. That's the word. And the things of this world grow strangely dim. So all those other senses, they kind of slightly start to dim. And if you think about the past or the future in that moment in God's presence, it's like, it doesn't matter, because what really matters is I know that God is here. That's a feeling, and it's joy, it's love, it's peace, It's physically warm, maybe a little tingly. That's what we want to feel as much as possible, because that's all the good stuff. Now, there's this here, especially when I need him most, and I put this question here: do we need to feel God's presence, or do we wish we could stop feeling something else? Because sometimes that's why we're praying to God, is we're praying to God not so much, God, I want to feel your presence, I want to be close to you, but it's more like I want to forget about or be detached from what I'm going through right now. If we're thinking about if you're thinking about the person that you are the closest to and the most intimate with, you can have a tremendous impact on each other's lives and your experience of something close to these emotions we have with God. You can feel closeness and love. And so if we ask the person that's closest to us to come close to us, and they kind of know that we're maybe they're being used in a certain way to just forget about everything. Now that's fine. Just kind of know that there can be a difference there. And if you're in God's shoes, and if God is like us, God wants us to want him. And if we're coming to God and the big thing is, God, I just want to be rid of this, and this is why I'm coming to you, then I think that makes it a little bit harder to experience the presence of God, because that focus really is about the need. And it's hard that way, because when we feel that we need something the most, it's hard to get out of that. We kind of can get locked in to this feeling of, I need a certain thing. I need something to change. We can get so locked into that. And it can be, we can be angry about something and so upset about something, and it's hard to shake that. We could feel a sense of rejection from somebody else or betrayal from somebody else, and it's hard to shake that and to get out of that. We could feel very lonely. We could feel very depressed. There's all these things that we can get locked into these things, and we can marinate in that stuff for a long, long time. And we can ask for God's help. But that's a different ask than the ask of, God, I love you and want to be close to you, and that's it. I don't have any other agenda. That's it. So that'd be my comment on that one. Are there anybody like to make any comments? Let me go back to the comment section here. Any other comments? Yeah, I'm sorry that we're going through that problem, Paula, with you getting on. Try your mic. You may have to close Facebook and only use the other one. But I know that's it's hard to let go of one thing, because you just don't know if you might need it again. So anybody like to make any comments or have any questions about those kind of common problems that we face when we're experiencing God's presence? Now, this is a lot of the amount that we cover each week has a lot to do with the person leading this discussion, but adding a few comments, that we're going to move along at the regular Faith Church Bible study pace, and you know what that means. Some days fast and some days slow. I'll keep an eye open for your comments. So we're at 10:45. I'd like for us to jump into. We're going to have to come back into chapter 2. We're kind of at the beginning, but that's okay. We'll work through chapter 2 and go ahead into chapter 3 if you want to. We'll see how fast we can go along. I did want to get to this text today. It is in chapter 2. It's mentioned in chapter 2, and it is recently one of my favorite texts. And this is a great reminder text. This popped up for the lectionary, and so it was used for a sermon within the last 2 years. And the thing that really hit me was when Mary woke up and realized that she was talking to Jesus all along. And so this is, I think this is good for us because this is where we're going to find ourselves when when we're looking to experience the presence of God. So John chapter 20, verses 11 through 18. This is the Jesus appearance after the resurrection to Mary Magdalene. But Mary stood weeping outside the tomb. As she wept, she bent over to look into the tomb, and she saw 2 angels in white sitting where the body of Jesus had been lying, one at the head, the other at the feet. They said to her, "Woman, why are you weeping?" She said to them, "They have taken away my Lord, and I do not know where they have laid him." When she had said this, she turned around and saw Jesus standing there, but she did not know that it was Jesus. Jesus said to her, "Woman, why are you weeping? Whom are you looking for?" Supposing him to be the gardener, she said to him, "Sir, if you have carried him away, tell me where you have laid him, and I will take him away." Jesus said to her, "Mary." She turned and said to him in Hebrew, "Rabboni," which means teacher. Jesus said to her, "Do not hold me, because I have not yet ascended to the Father, but go to my brothers and say to them, I am ascending to my Father and your Father, to my God and your God." Mary Magdalene went and announced to the disciples, "I have seen the Lord." And she told them that he had said these things to her. So, first of all, we see Mary is here weeping. She's weeping. This is the context here. I don't want to sign up. So she's weeping. So in that state of mind, she's just overwhelmed by sorrow. And that will happen to us sometimes in life, especially losing the person that means the most in life. And look at how that, her pain and grief makes her forget about the promises that Jesus has made, and it prevents her from seeing what's right in front of her. And she's still thinking about the future, about how she can fix this. So she's so overwhelmed that all she wants to do is have the body of Jesus back. She's not even asking to have him arisen or to have him come back to life. She's just asking for the body. She goes in, she sees angels, and when she sees angels, all she can see is that Jesus is missing. And I don't know, if we saw 2 angels, you would imagine asking, "Hey, do you know where Jesus is?" or can you tell God to help me out or something? There's such a focus on the grief and the body that is gone, and they've taken away my Lord. And when she said this, she turned around and she saw Jesus standing there. So they didn't even have a chance to reply. Suddenly Jesus is there. And she's like, well, if they don't know where the body is, maybe this guy does. Or maybe this guy did something. and she doesn't recognize him. And when she hears him call her name, that's when she wakes up and realizes this is the risen Lord. So there's the end of our chapter here. It talks about how she confused Jesus for the gardener. How many times might we be experiencing the presence of God in our everyday walking around, but just like Mary, we're caught in we're caught in the zone, whether it's the grieving zone or the other type. Well, I'm going to save the sometimes he hides himself for a little bit later. Any last questions or comments as we wrap up our time together? Anybody? I know microphones and cameras are intimidating. There's no holding back when we used to do Bible study. Well, there were some silent moments. Usually not, though. All right. Let's go ahead and get a little bit further along in chapter 2 before we leave the rest for next time. So sometimes God hides himself. This author's comparing God to Waldo, the little cartoon character that hides in plain sight. He says the author of Where's Waldo says he hides Waldo so that children can learn to be aware of what's going on around them. I like to see them see wonder in places it might not have occurred to them. So if you're looking for Waldo, the cool thing is that you get to see all this neat stuff all over the page. And you realize, especially if you're finding a character that looks similarly, like, oh, that's not him, but look at what this character is doing. And oh, that's not him, but look at what this character is doing. And by the time you're done, you have a thorough understanding of what's on this page. Whereas if you were just sitting back and looking at the page, you wouldn't pick out all the little details. So there's a benefit there. And I like, I thought at first when I read this, he said, I like to see them wander in places that might not have occurred to them, W-A-N-D-E-R, because you're kind of wandering around looking for Waldo. But this is to see wonder in places that might not have occurred to them. And maybe it feels like a fish trying to experience water. So that's one of the images that came to my mind when we're trying to experience the presence of God, and God's presence is right there. It's like, how does a fish experience water? Well, the only way a fish would know the experience of water is to be pulled out of the water and then drop back in the water. But if God is all around us, how would we know unless maybe we're taken out and then brought back? We don't want to explore that too much. God has various ways of drawing us to him, but sometimes he hides himself. Now we talk about rainbow days. And rainbow days are, we're looking at the example of Noah. And Noah, after the flood, and God is kind of renewing or solidifying his covenant. He makes his covenant with Noah, and he says, I will be with you, and I will give you a sign of my covenant, a rainbow. And so the rainbow, or the bow in the clouds, that's the reminder that God has made a covenant, and God promises never to destroy the earth again with the flood. And again, right in the middle there, the promise of the covenant, I will be with you. And this is probably the essence of each one of the covenants that God makes. I will be with you. That's what God is trying to get across to us. I will be with you. And then God needs to give us some kind of a some kind of a reminder. And so we do stuff like rainbows. And later on in covenants, we have circumcision becomes a sign of the covenant. But the purpose is, I will be with you. And so the other, in marriage, we have wedding rings. These are the signs of the covenant that we've made. It's a sign of that covenant, which is, I will be with you. So these are reminders. These symbols, the rainbow and circumcision. Sometimes we say baptism is the sign of the covenant. Our wedding rings, these are signs of the covenant. I will be with you. That is what covenant is all about, is about us being together. Having a rainbow day would be that big joyous moment. That's the party of a lifetime. That's the wedding feast celebration. Maybe that's the first time that you experience the presence of God or realize that God loved you. And so these rainbow days, these exuberant, ecstatic milestones of events in our life, those rainbow days, they are not every day. So if you had a wedding every day for the rest of your life, it's not going to be something that's so ecstatic and happy about, because these are the peak moments, the high moments. So it's good to have rainbow days. It's good to long for rainbow days. Ultimately, though, what we want, if we want to marry somebody, we don't say, I want to marry you because I really want to have an awesome wedding ceremony. That's what I want. And if I can have that, I'll be satisfied for the rest of my life. Well, that's not what you want to hear. What you want to hear is, I want to get married because I want to be with you every day from now on. And that's what God is looking for. So, of course, rainbow days are good, and I hope you have them, and I hope I have them, these high peak days. But ultimately, what we're looking for are those everyday things. And I like this phrase here. He says he hasn't had a rainbow day every day, but I have had some thin places in the fabric of my life. These are the kind of the places between the divine and the everyday where there's this real thin separation between the two. So you're not like fully into the rainbow day kind of experience, but you're just right there, and that's an ongoing thing that can be a wonderful thing. It's like you're not going to eat like you're at a feast every single meal. You want to have something good and healthy every single day. So, all right. We will pick up with this subtitle section, Rainbow Days Are Gifts. And we'll wrap up our time together. We will keep trying to work on the technical aspect of this so that we can include as much people as possible. You are welcome. If you're here in Port St. Lucie, you're welcome to come to Bible study in person. And we have the same setup that we usually do for our Sunday worship service. And I don't have a mask, but I got a nice, big, huge black plastic shield in front of me, and we're distanced and all that type of thing. So you're welcome to join in online or in person, and we will enjoy spending time with you however it may be. Let me drop this down a little bit. Otherwise, you're just going to hear my voice loud in your ear. Send us out in the power of your Spirit, Lord. May our lives bring Jesus to the world. May each thought and word bring glory to your name. Send us out in your Spirit, Lord, we pray. Send us out in the power Thank you so much for joining in, everybody, and we'll see you again next time. God bless.